Amy Lynn Bradley was a vibrant 23-year-old with a promising future ahead of her. She was aboard the Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas on a Caribbean vacation with her family. The cruise departed Puerto Rico on March 21, 1998, with Amy, her parents, and her brother, Brad, ready for a week of rest, fun, and relaxation. Amy, known for her energy, charisma, and independence, had recently landed a new job and was about to move into a new apartment. On that bright March morning, the expectation was only for pleasure and new experiences. Aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas was a world of possibilities, with over 2,000 passengers and hundreds of crew members on a modern and luxurious ship. However, what seemed like a dream vacation turned into an endless nightmare, forever marking her family's life. And what happened to Amy? How did she disappear without a trace in a place with so many people and security? The story continues, and with each new detail, the mystery deepens even further. Prepare for more twists and turns that could change everything you thought about this case. If you're following this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapters of this mystery. On the evening of March 23, 1998, Amy Bradley was enjoying another night aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas. After dinner with her family in the main restaurant, Amy and her brother, Brad, decided to head to the ship's bar to enjoy the party. The place was lively, with a local band called Blue Orchid playing salsa, merengue, and even a bit of rock. The music was loud and the lights flashed, creating a relaxed atmosphere, typical of a luxury cruise. Amy, with her extroverted personality, soon got involved in the dancing, which was no surprise to those who knew her. She had always been a sociable person with contagious energy. It was at this moment that she danced with Alistair Yellow Douglas, one of the band's musicians. The encounter drew attention, as their interaction seemed a little more intense than usual. Witnesses to the evening reported that Amy and Alistair seemed to be having a good time, but conflicting accounts also emerged. Some observers stated that Amy was visibly uncomfortable, with a forced smile and a body posture that suggested she wasn't entirely at ease. For a moment, she appeared to have moved slightly away from him, crossing her arms as if trying to protect herself in some way. Alistair, on the other hand, denied any inappropriate behavior, but the fact that several passengers noticed the interaction raises questions. Amy's discomfort became more palpable as the night progressed. When the party was in full swing, Amy's brother Brad mentioned that she seemed to be distancing herself more and more, a feeling he hadn't quite been able to interpret at the time, although she stayed up until 3:30 in the morning. When she returned to her cabin with her brother, there was something strange in the air. The conversation she had with Alistair, the background music, and the energy of the place seemed to have an influence on her. But what really happened between them that night remains a mystery. Amy's behavior, combined with accounts of her interaction with Alistair, raises even more questions about the last moments she spent on the ship. What seemed to be just a fun night on a cruise would, in fact, become the beginning of an unexplained disappearance. On the morning of March 24, 1998, Ron Bradley, Amy's father, woke up around 5:30 am in his cabin on the Rhapsody of the Seas. Upon getting up, he approached the window and saw Amy sitting alone on the balcony, gazing at the sea. She was smoking a cigarette, a tranquil and ordinary sight, seemingly just another morning on vacation. Ron approached her, spoke briefly, and asked her to go back to bed. Amy responded softly, and apparently showed no signs of worry or anxiety. That would be the last time he would see her alive. Half an hour later, around 6 a.m., Ron woke up again and got up to see if Amy was still at the counter. When he got there, she was no longer there. Thinking she might have gone to get coffee or take a walk around the ship, Ron wasn't initially alarmed. However, when he searched the cabin and couldn't find her anywhere, his concern began to grow. The scene was strange. Amy's belongings were in their place, as if she had suddenly left. Her shoes were there, her shirt was on the bed, and her cigarettes, still unused, were on the counter. Everything was intact, except for Amy's absence. Ron searched the cabin, the corridors, and nearby areas, but found no sign of his daughter. The ship seemed calm, and the crew, apparently unconcerned, offered no immediate assistance. There were no signs of a struggle, screams, or any situation that might indicate a violent incident. It seemed, at first glance, that Amy had simply vanished without a trace. Her personal items, including her clothes and cigarettes, were scattered in a way that did not suggest an act of escape or an immediate kidnapping. The mystery of her absence was profound and unsettling. The lack of a clear explanation, combined with the crew's silence and inaction, would soon become a nightmare for the Bradley family, who would begin to question every detail of that seemingly normal morning. What really happened to Amy? The answer was about to be lost in the void of international waters. When Amy's family realized she was missing, the initial reaction from the crew of the Rhapsody of the Seas was alarmingly inadequate. Ron Bradley, Amy's father, immediately contacted ship security at 6:30 a.m., reporting his daughter's disappearance. However, the crew's response was marked by disinterest and disorganization. The staff told him to wait, suggesting Amy would likely reappear soon, as it wasn't uncommon for someone to temporarily disappear after a night of partying. This minimization of the situation was all the more shocking considering a young girl was missing at sea without any clear explanation. The lack of immediate action from security was alarming, but it wasn't the only problem. Because the ship was in international waters, the crew lacked specific protocols for dealing with disappearances of this type. The legal limbo in which the vessel found itself further aggravated the situation. Without a local authority to intervene quickly, and without a clear set of international laws to protect passengers in such cases, Royal Caribbean's response was disorganized and slow. Instead of an immediate investigation, with security measures and even the closing of the ship's doors, as would be expected in such a serious situation, the crew treated the case as if it were a mere momentary lapse. Furthermore, the delay in alerting passengers and local authorities was another critical factor. The alert about Amy's disappearance was only given internally, through channels restricted to the crew, and this occurred almost 2 hours after Ron had requested help. There was no public announcement to the passengers, nor any attempt to prevent anyone from disembarking the ship while the search for Amy was underway. The ship docked normally in Curaçao, and passengers began to disembark to explore the island, while Amy's desperate family continued to search for her. The lack of a rigorous protocol for dealing with this type of situation, coupled with the crew's delayed response, drastically reduced any possibility of quickly rescuing Amy. What should have been a coordinated and urgent action ended up becoming a series of failures that made the investigation even more difficult. When Amy's disappearance was noticed by her family, the first action taken by the crew of the Rhapsody of the Seas was to conduct a superficial search of the ship. However, this attempt to locate the young woman was marked by a lack of rigor and commitment. Ship security limited itself to inspecting common areas and claimed to have searched the cabins. But Amy's family doubted this review, since access to passengers was not restricted and there was no thorough investigation. The crew did not close the ship's doors, allowing passengers to continue disembarking, and thus increasing the possibility that someone might have taken Amy off the ship unnoticed. The search seemed more like a formality than a genuine effort to find the missing woman, which left the family frustrated and aware that something much more serious might be happening. Furthermore, a comment made by one of the ship's stewards the night before was raised as a possible clue. During the party at the bar, the steward reportedly said, in a relaxed and seemingly harmless manner, that it would be easy to take Amy and sell her somewhere in the Caribbean, since she was very beautiful. Initially, the family considered this comment a meaningless joke, but after Amy disappeared, the phrase began to be seen in a new light. The comment, which at first seemed harmless, now appeared to be a possible indication that someone on the ship was watching Amy with ill intentions. This detail, coupled with the fact that the search of the ship was not at all thorough, made the family even more suspicious about the safety on board and the behavior of the crew. The lack of thorough investigation and the crew's negligence created fertile ground for speculation. While the family desperately tried to piece together clues, the ship seemed to treat the disappearance with alarming indifference. The feeling that there was something more behind the case began to solidify as contradictory testimonies began to emerge. Ship employees, including the steward, who initially seemed like just an observer, now became key players in trying to understand what really happened that night. However, no substantial action was taken to effectively investigate these clues. The search and initial investigative efforts seemed more like a formality than a genuine attempt to find Amy. When Amy Bradley disappeared, the initial response from the crew of the Rhapsody of the Seas was, at best, superficial. The search conducted on the ship was ineffective, limited only to a check of common areas, without completely closing off passenger access. There were no real efforts to restrict people's movement or conduct a thorough investigation of the cabins. The crew took no more aggressive measures to find Amy, such as closing doors or preventing anyone from disembarking. The family, soon aware of the lack of effort, began to suspect that if someone had taken Amy, it would have been easy to do so at that moment. The ship continued its route, and passengers continued to disembark, making it increasingly difficult to locate the young woman. Furthermore, a seemingly innocent comment made by a steward during a party at the ship's bar became a disturbing clue. He had said, in a relaxed tone, that it would be easy to take Amy and sell her somewhere in the Caribbean, as she was very beautiful. At the time, the comment was treated as a joke, without further implications. However, with Amy's disappearance, the phrase began to take on a new meaning. The initially harmless comment now seemed to suggest that someone might have actually planned something more sinister. This detail, coupled with the crew's negligent response, made the family realize that Amy's disappearance could be part of a more elaborate plan. Another crucial element that emerged during the investigations was Amy's relationship with Alistair Yellow Douglas, a musician from the local band. He was one of the last people seen with Amy on the night of her disappearance, but his statements about what happened were contradictory. Witnesses stated that he seemed closer to Amy than he suggested in his later interviews. Alistair denied any involvement in the disappearance, claiming he didn't see her after the party, but video footage and witness accounts indicated that he had met with her again. This discrepancy in Alistair's statements generated even more suspicion, especially since he seemed to be a key figure on Amy's last night on the ship. The lack of consistency in his testimonies only deepened the mystery, making it one of the main points of investigation. Alistair's evasive and contradictory behavior, coupled with the steward's disturbing comment, indicated that there was much more going on than the crew was willing to admit, leaving the family with more questions than answers. The disappearance of Amy Bradley took an even darker turn when reports began to emerge of people claiming to have seen a young woman matching her description in suspicious situations, possibly involved in a human trafficking scheme. In Curaçao, a few months after the disappearance, a woman vacationing on the island reported seeing a young woman who looked very much like Amy, accompanied by 3 men. The young woman appeared to be in a captive situation, behaving visibly nervous and apprehensively, as if she were being forced to stay with the men. The witness approached, but before she could speak to the young woman, one of the men gave her a threatening look, causing her to immediately back away. The woman was convinced it was Amy, but fearing for her own safety, she was unable to interact with the young woman to confirm her identity. In 1999, another disturbing account came to light. A former U.S. Marine stationed in Curaçao entered a local brothel during a visit to the island. Among the women who approached him, one caught his attention in a peculiar way. She had fair skin, short dark hair, and tattoos that didn't match the typical appearance of the local women. What disturbed the former Marine most was the woman's attitude. She approached him and in a whisper said, "My name is Amy Bradley. I need help." Shocked, the former Marine tried to act, but the next day, when he returned to the brothel to try to find her, it had been closed and vanished without a trace. He spent months before feeling able to recount what happened, but when he saw a missing person poster with Amy's picture, he was certain it was her. In 2005, 7 years after her disappearance, the Bradley family received an anonymous email containing a disturbing photograph. The image showed a woman lying on a bed with a distant and desperate look. She was provocatively dressed, and her tattoos appeared to match Amy's, including the famous lizard on her navel and the sun symbol on her lower back. The family, particularly Amy's mother, recognized the pain in the woman's eyes in the photo, believing it to be their daughter. The image was analyzed by FBI experts who, while unable to confirm with 100% certainty that it was Amy, admitted there were significant similarities. For the family, this was an alarming indication that Amy might have been a victim of a human trafficking network, used and exploited somewhere far away, without any hope of freedom. These accounts and the 2005 photo helped solidify the theory that Amy might have been kidnapped and sold to a criminal human trafficking network. Every clue seemed to fit, pointing to an organized operation where Amy would be just one of the possible victims. The disappearance of Amy Bradley raises increasingly disturbing questions about the possibility that she was the target of a premeditated kidnapping scheme. Considering the circumstances, Some are beginning to believe that the cruise ship environment was ideally used as part of a plan to deceive and isolate the victim. On a luxury ship, surrounded by thousands of people, and with a festive and relaxed atmosphere, a young woman like Amy, with her independence and outgoing personality, could easily be observed and approached by those planning something more sinister. The party atmosphere, the loud music, the festive environments, and the perception of security were the perfect settings to create a false sense of protection while someone prepared to take action. The steward's comment, which initially seemed like an innocent joke, takes on a new gravity when analyzed in light of Amy's disappearance. The phrase, "It would be easy to take her and sell her somewhere in the Caribbean," now appears to indicate that someone was indeed watching Amy and considering her a target. The way the comment was made, mixing humor and threat, may have been an attempt to test boundaries and gauge others' reactions without immediately raising suspicion. This comment was not properly investigated, which raises further questions about the crew's seriousness regarding passenger safety. Furthermore, Amy's interaction with Alistair Yellow Douglas, the band's musician, also becomes a point of reflection. The connection between them during the night may have been used to manipulate her emotionally, further isolating her from her family and creating a bond of trust. Amy's behavior during the party, with reports of discomfort and hesitation, can be interpreted as a sign that she was already being observed and manipulated. The musician, although he denied any involvement in her disappearance, had his credibility called into question, as the testimonies indicated contradictory behavior in his statements. The lack of surveillance on board the ship, the absence of rigorous protocols for disappearance situations, and the inadequate response from the crew created a loophole that could easily be exploited by someone with criminal intentions. The lack of swift action to restrict access or prevent passengers from disembarking at the time of the disappearance also contributed to strengthening the theory that Amy's kidnapping may have been orchestrated with alarming precision. The criminal operation, if it existed, appeared to have exploited all the flaws in the ship's system, making Amy's disappearance. Amy Bradley's disappearance left a trail of deep pain and uncertainty in her family's life. From the moment she disappeared, the Bradley family's struggle to find answers became a constant in their lives. The pain of not knowing what happened to Amy was unbearable, but the lack of official answers only increased the suffering. For years, the Bradley family did not stop searching for clues, trying to reverse the inaction of the ship's crew and the authorities. The relentless pursuit of justice led them to invest in new investigations, often resorting to private detectives who could help them uncover what really happened that morning in 1998. Each new clue brought temporary hope, but often ended in a dead end. In addition to the investigations, the family sought to keep Amy's case alive in the media. They participated in television programs, interviews, and even documentaries in an attempt to draw public attention to their daughter's disappearance. The media was an essential tool in keeping Amy's name in people's minds, but this also generated constant pressure on the Bradleys. The media exposure, while helping to publicize the case, also brought immense emotional strain. With each new detail that emerged, hope was accompanied by growing frustration at the lack of progress. In financial terms, the search for Amy came at a very high cost. The family sold properties, took on debt, and invested all their savings to continue the search. Hiring private detectives, paying for tests and trips to follow leads in different countries, in addition to the costs of lawyers and media campaigns, completely drained the family's resources. The financial pressure was as great as the emotional pressure, and the weight of seeing time pass without answers only increased the feeling of helplessness. Each day that passed without finding Amy seemed like another blow to the Bradleys, who were doing the impossible not to give up. The emotional toll caused by the lack of answers also deeply affected relationships within the family. Constant anguish, anxiety, and suffering became part of daily life, and everyone was deeply scarred by uncertainty. Ron, the father, spent hours searching for clues online, trying to find a face resembling his daughter's anywhere in the world. Amy's mother, completely devoted to the search, felt emotionally consumed, unable to move on with her life until she knew her daughter's fate. Brad, the brother, carried a feeling of guilt and helplessness for not having done more to protect his sister. They were united in their grief, but also in a continuous race against time, hoping that one day someone would find a definitive clue about what happened to Amy. an even more intricate and difficult case to solve. The disappearance of Amy Bradley alarmingly exposed serious flaws in cruise line regulations and responses to emergencies, especially when it comes to missing passengers. The case highlighted the lack of adequate protocols for handling such serious events aboard luxury ships, where, theoretically, passengers should be in a safe environment. The slow and disorganized response of the Rhapsody of the Seas crew was a direct reflection of the industry's lack of preparedness to deal with such situations. When Amy disappeared, there was no immediate action to restrict access to the ship or to coordinate an efficient search. Instead, the crew treated the case with indifference, failing to take the necessary steps to ensure passenger safety and failing to effectively alert local authorities. This lack of preparedness and response reveals an alarming gap in cruise company policies. To a large extent, the industry lacks clear regulations or robust protocols on how to handle crimes, disappearances, or emergencies at sea. The isolated environment of the ship, far from any local or national jurisdiction, creates a perfect setting for crimes such as kidnappings and disappearances. As passengers and crew are beyond the immediate reach of land-based laws, the absence of a defined legal framework and the lack of surveillance at strategic points make cruises an environment where the perfect crime can be committed, with a relative sense of impunity. Furthermore, cruise companies often have complete control over the information that is released and how cases are handled, which can contribute to a negligent approach and the minimization of the seriousness of incidents. When it comes to disappearances such as Amy's, there is often a tendency to treat them as minor occurrences or situations that can be resolved internally without the need to involve external authorities. This not only delays investigations, but also allows potential criminals to act without fear of punishment, taking advantage of the lack of transparency and the legal complexity of the cruise environment. Amy Bradley's story, therefore, raises important questions about the need for stricter regulation of the cruise industry. The case revealed that, in many respects, cruise ships operate in a legal gray area, where the lack of decisive action and clear policies creates fertile ground for crime. This exposed a worrying reality. The industry urgently needs to review its practices, establish more rigorous protocols to ensure passenger safety, and above all, adopt a more responsible and transparent stance in cases like Amy's. The legacy of her story may be the key to forcing necessary changes in how cruise lines handle disappearances and other crimes on board. More than 25 years after Amy Bradley's disappearance, the case remains shrouded in mystery, without a definitive solution. The uncertainty about what happened to her, whether she is still alive or if she was a victim of a human trafficking scheme, remains a distressing question for her family and everyone who followed the case. The clues that have emerged over the years, such as accounts from people who saw her in different locations and the disturbing photo from 2005, reinforce the possibility that Amy was kidnapped and sold to a criminal network. But to this day, nothing concrete has been found to confirm or refute these theories. The lack of clear answers and the complexity of the case leave everyone involved in a state of constant frustration and pain, unable to close the cycle of grief or seek peace. The reward offered by the FBI and Amy's family reflects their desperation and determination to find answers. The FBI announced a $25,000 reward for any information leading to Amy's whereabouts, and the Bradley family increased that offer to $250,000, hoping someone might provide the key to unlocking the enigma. However, despite all efforts, the truth remains elusive. Every clue, no matter how promising, leads to a dead end, and the feeling of helplessness only grows as time passes. The uncertainty about her situation, whether she is still alive or irreversibly victimized, is a burden difficult to bear. The fact that the case remains unsolved for so long raises questions about the effectiveness of the investigations and the handling of her situation. The lack of definitive answers also reveals the limitations of the investigations carried out, whether by local or international authorities, who have yet to find sufficient evidence to elucidate Amy's fate. The possibility that she was a victim of a human trafficking network, although a plausible theory, has not been confirmed, leaving a large void in the narrative of what happened. Each anniversary of her disappearance is a painful reminder that justice and truth are yet to be achieved. Meanwhile, the Bradley family continues to live with the hope that one day someone will recognize Amy, bring new information to light, or finally reveal what happened on that fateful morning in 1998. Disappearances aboard cruise ships are a more common reality than one might imagine, although the cruise industry rarely discusses the issue openly. Cases like Amy Bradley's draw attention to a silent and often neglected problem that affects hundreds of families each year. While most people associate cruises with luxury vacations and tranquility, there is a dark layer surrounding these giants of the sea. The lack of security and vulnerability is created by the isolated nature of these ships. The lack of adequate media coverage makes these incidents even more invisible, as disappearances are often treated as isolated cases or minimized by cruise companies. Media coverage, when it exists, tends to be superficial, not going beyond the most obvious details, and rarely focuses on the security flaws that may have contributed to these events. Furthermore, legal issues in cases of disappearances on cruise ships are extremely complicated. Since these ships are frequently in international waters, this creates a legal vacuum, where local authorities have little or no jurisdiction, and the laws governing what happens on board are complex and often difficult to enforce. The absence of clear international legislation on what should be done in cases of disappearances at sea makes it even more difficult for families to seek justice. Cruise companies, in turn, have enormous power over what is disclosed and often downplay or delay investigations to avoid damage to their image or the reputation of the industry. This scenario creates an environment conducive to crime, as victims and their families face significant obstacles in obtaining answers and justice. The lack of transparency and immediate action on the part of cruise companies, combined with the complexity of international legal issues, leaves many cases unsolved. Instead of adopting a more responsible and regulated approach, the industry often attempts to cover up or minimize incidents, creating a culture of impunity. The lack of adequate security mechanisms, the scarcity of surveillance cameras in strategic areas, and the insufficient training of crew members to handle emergency situations further complicate the prevention and resolution of disappearances. The case of Amy Bradley is just one example of a larger problem that demands urgent attention from authorities, the cruise industry, and the media. The Amy Bradley case is a tragedy that exposes alarming flaws in security and surveillance on cruise ships, as well as revealing the urgent need for changes in how the industry handles disappearances and emergencies. The lack of clear and effective protocols for dealing with these occurrences, inadequate response of the crew, and the failure to act promptly demonstrate that passenger safety is often relegated to second place in the name of preserving the image of cruise companies. When a disappearance occurs, like Amy's, the combination of an isolated environment and the complexity of legal issues involving international waters creates an ideal scenario for what many consider the perfect crime. This makes passengers vulnerable, as there are no guarantees that their lives and safety will be treated with the necessary seriousness and urgency. This case also teaches us that it is crucial for the cruise industry to improve its security practices. The first measure would be to ensure that all areas of the ship are covered by security cameras, including corridors, stairwells, and other higher-risk zones. Surveillance must be constant and accessible to the authorities in order to facilitate the investigation of any incident. Furthermore, the crew needs more rigorous training to handle emergencies and disappearances, with well-defined protocols for immediate communication with the authorities and blocking access to the ship until the situation is resolved. The cruise industry also needs to commit to implementing more effective preventative measures, such as rigorous passenger and crew screenings, and ongoing training on how to identify and prevent potential risk situations. Furthermore, companies should adopt a policy of complete transparency, reporting missing persons incidents clearly and immediately, and offering full cooperation with investigations. Ultimately, Amy Bradley's case shows that the lack of adequate regulation and the flawed response from cruise companies jeopardize the safety of their passengers. To prevent situations like hers from recurring, it is crucial that the cruise industry adopts significant changes in its practices, with a greater focus on protection, surveillance, and the creation of clear protocols for emergency situations. Amy's legacy should be a motivation to transform onboard cruise safety and ensure that passengers can travel with peace of mind, knowing that their lives and safety are a priority.